It's a very individual car, and it suits people who are a little bit individual rather than just buying a routine car.
To make a deal.
What kind of a deal?
A deal. Maybe the guy's a Republican. Business is business. Right?
The deal meant that Graham Nairn effectively took over all the sales and marketing of the Seven from his base in Caterham-on-the-Hill in Surrey. The old premises have long been replaced, but the flats and workshops behind recall the site's significance.
And that took us right the way through to '68 with the Series 3, where by that time the demand was increasing. We did a fair old job of publicity, I think. We did a series called The Prisoner. And Patrick McGoohan, who was the lead actor and major writer of the whole series, walked into the factory looking to use a car. I think Lotus were trying to talk him into a Lotus Elan, and he saw the old Lotus 7 demonstrator sitting over in the yard and said, "I'll have that car." And that was used as the introduction to the series, prime time, 7 o'clock Sunday night. There was a Lotus 7 coming straight to the cameras, and it was used in a couple of episodes as well. So that all helped move it up to a higher gear.
I'm not a number, I'm a free man. Yeah, that's where it all began.
When actor Patrick McGoohan spotted the Lotus 7 during a visit to Lotus HQ, he knew it was the perfect car for his secret agent character to drive in The Prisoner.
I mean, the setting of the Prisoner, Portmeirion, is so weird and surreal anyway, and this weird, surreal car just fitted perfectly in with that. And Patrick McGoohan was so cool, the car was so cool, yeah. He massively tapped into the 7 brand.
The Lotus 7.
What a lovely little bit of kit. Quite petite, but long, and just no nonsense.
That was the cheapest, quickest and most exciting car you could probably get for the money.
It is a car that it just screams, hey, you want to come and have some fun? Hop in. And that's it. It's a fun mobile. If you want a weekend away where you want your hair to be beautiful and you want your manicured nails to stay manicured, move away. Do not go anywhere near this car.
No, wind in the hair, bugs in your teeth, people's fag butts bouncing off your head. Yeah, all the joys of open-air motoring.
If you want a rough and ready weekend that you can perhaps get a toothbrush in the back, then go for it.
They are a brilliant piece of engineering, and they totally deserve to be right at the top of the list when it comes to iconic British cars.
Under the purchase tax regulations of the time, a customer could roughly halve the cost of his new car by building it himself. It required a degree of sophisticated accounting, with the chassis and components coming from 2 separate companies, and it also meant there was no workshop manual.
One of the ways they got around that was to published, I think it was in the Lotus Owners Club magazine. They published a whole series of articles on how the Lotus 7 could be stripped down and completely overhauled. And if you read that backwards, you had to have all series, obviously. If you read it backwards, it'll tell you how to build it. So we resuscitated the Series 2 in a sense that we upgraded it. Later Ford engine, bigger wheels and tyres, a few bits and pieces like that, but essentially the same car. And that progressed right through very successfully to the point where the then managing director, I suppose he would have been, of Lotus Components, decided to expand production generally and really go for it in a big way. And he came up with the Series 4. It was really geared up for higher production and higher supply of spare parts and so on. And then in the early 70s, one of the government secret weapons was coming out called VAT. It came out in 1973, and that meant that Lotus lost the advantages they had, because by selling them in kit form, there was no purchase tax payable. Purchase tax was only payable on a complete motor car, but not on spare parts, which Lotus sold. So we went on the Series 4. As I say, the VAT came out in 73. We also got hit to the country, that did, by a pretty major slump. Doubling of oil prices, interest rates going to 18% and all those wonderful things. So that really put the limit on as far as Lotus were concerned. They weren't making much money out of it anyway, so they could just see a lot of aggravation and they decided to stop it. And that's when I chatted to Chapman about it, and he said, well, yes, okay. And we essentially did the deal as far as he was concerned. He was able to shift all his spare parts, anything to do with the Lotus 7 out. So he didn't have any more to do with it. Well, in my time, we built over 11,000.
And Lotus did 2 and a bit thousand?
2,300, something like that, yes.
They call it small volume, don't they? So they call it small volume, but 13,000, 14,000 cars.
Well, we had it year by year and doing, I think we probably used 800 in a phenomenal year and 500 in most years. So as the years go by, you tot up the numbers, obviously.
Yeah.
And it's still running.
If the road car was selling well, there were problems on the track where the competition was getting restless.
Deep down, they didn't like us. They didn't like it because they wanted to tempt in Ferraris and more exotic cars, which they didn't want because we would have... The 7's quick car, obviously. Take it on a tight clubman circuit, it'll win. Put it on a long circuit, it's up against aerodynamics, it's not going to win. But the authorities couldn't accept that, so we got banned.
By the new millennium, the Nern family was ready to pass on the company, with its sales office now at the bottom of the hill in Caterham, and the factory that had moved to Dartford just before the October hurricane destroyed the old workshop. A willing buyer was found in a consortium led by Lotus engineer Ansar Ali.
The cars might look the same, but they all have their own individual personalities, and in many ways that's what embodies our customer base as well. It's a very personal statement, the Caterham 7. And the work that we're doing from an engineering perspective is looking forward to how do we take what is very much an iconic design, take it forward, take it in terms of evolutionary steps rather than revolutionary steps to make sure that we're around for another 50 years. I think evolution is perhaps more important than revolution. And the car that we have here today, which is a concept car, the X330, embodies what we're looking at for the future from an engineering perspective, from materials perspective, but very much keeping the philosophy of the design true, because I think, I think I would be burned at the stake if I was to change the shape of it. But it doesn't mean to say that it can't go through evolutionary step changes.
Can you really put any more power through those rear wheels?
Most certainly. I think the new chassis which is the CSR, which we launched just over 2 years ago, which I think is a fantastic design of independent rear suspension and inboard front suspension, F1 type suspension. Gives such a compliant ride and in many ways can take more power. And the X330 concept car that we have today, which has 330 brake horse, just shows, and when people will get to drive it in terms of sort of development drives, will show how well that chassis can take more power.
Andy Noble's been selling Caterhams practically since the beginning.
I think in this day and age, more and more people have it as a fun car, so it's a second, third, maybe even fourth car. I think in the early years, yes, a lot of people use it as their only car, but times change, people have become wealthier and more people have got garages to put toys in, and obviously the Caterham's right up on that list.
And in terms of specification, are you more concerned about it being good on the track or good on the road?
We offer something for everyone. Some customers will come along and say, I want a car for Sunday afternoons to go down to the seaside to go touring in it, and we can offer a specification for that. Other customers will come to us and say, I want the most outrageous car you can produce, and we can do that, and everything in between. So, there really is something for everyone.
And I understand that obviously there's tremendous popularity overseas as well.
Which is growing. The UK market is well established now, and we will keep building on that basis. But in a lot of overseas markets, we've still to break through. I mean, we are a niche product in a lot of countries, but if we continue getting exposure there, both with the motor racing and with our Caterham Drive experience, then it can only lead to better sales in those markets.
What do you think of Brexit, Andy?